Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to the Council Advisory Committee CAC meeting of September 9th, 2024. On behalf of Council, sincere condolences are extended to former Councillor Eric Bolland and his family on the death of his father. This meeting is being live streamed on the Town of Kentville YouTube channel. The most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting packages? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? As the Council Advisory Committee, CAC, we will vote as a committee to either send business forward to the council meeting for ratification, return to staff for further information or review, or defeat the recommendation. Members of council should be mindful of our decision-making wheel to make balanced and respectful decisions while adhering to our code of conduct. The council will be voting electronically on all motions except administrative, which will be by show of hands. Are there any conflict of interest issues the council should be aware of before the meeting commences? The chair notes that we have quorum, and we have been provided with a proposed agenda. CAO, I understand you have some changes for our agenda.
Yes, Your Worship, and they've changed a few times, so I'll try and get them straight, but please correct me if I don't. We would like to remove new business 8B1 and 8B2 sanitary budgets, and we'd like to add 3B, approval of minutes, special CAC September 6th, CAC meeting September 6th, 2024. And in the in-camera session, 10B, disclosure, and 10C, legal.
Sorry, 10B was disclosure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, those are additions.
Oh, and my apologies. Jeff Stewart, president of the FCM, was scheduled to do a presentation today, but he's dealing with a family emergency and he won't be able to be present.
Thank you, CAO. Are there any further additions or deletions to this agenda? I'd accept the motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Zabian for the motion and Councillor York for the second. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much. We have two sets of minutes for approval. The first set is the minutes of the 8th of July 2024 CAC meeting. They were distributed for your approval. If there are no changes, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate the minutes in red, and the annotated minutes will be added to the electronic meeting file as approved. No changes? All good. The next one was our meeting on Friday, the Council Advisory Committee meeting, the 6th of September 2024, were distributed for your approval this afternoon, as we realized that we had a set that could be done. If there are no changes to the minutes, they are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate the minutes in red, and the annotated minutes will be added to the meeting file. No changes? All good. All right, moving right along, we have no presentation this evening, so we'll move on to our department reports. The directors have provided their reports for council review and will provide an update and receive questions from council. The reports will be presented and are part of the record of this meeting. Only items of new business arising from the reports will be taken for motion. CAO Lawrence, could you please introduce our department reports and recommendations?
Thank you, Your Worship. Director of Finance, Wanda Matthews, will present the finance report.
Good evening. Jill, I was off for a couple of weeks, so Jill, you will notice my report is signed by Jill on my behalf, and I want to thank her for getting prepped, helping me get prepped for this meeting today. I wanted to highlight a few items under the operations side. So you will notice that our final tax levy has been issued for 24-25. And it is a total overall of our interim and our final bill of $13,276,955. Due to the timing of when our August bills went out, I don't have an updated accounts receivable aging, but that will come back next month once it's once the timing readjusts. I also wanted to note that as of August 1st, Finance ceased providing contracted financial services to the Kemptville Volunteer Fire Department. So that has concluded, and we have provided them with the records they need to set up their own financial service. I also have identified a couple of areas where we have compliance reporting with the province, just so you're aware of what is coming and the status of those responses. From a financial perspective, we have uploaded to our town's website our audited consolidated financial statements for the fiscal year March 31st, 24, as well as our operating and capital budget information for 24-25 for the town of Kemptville general funds. So those are loaded for public view, and as our sanitary sewer budget comes forward and those other items will get loaded as they are approved. Detransfer tax came into effect July 1st. The information that we've received right now from Access Nova Scotia, we get it kind of a month delay, so I don't have any tax information to give you on what was collected to date. There's nothing for the end of July, because most of those closings would have been initiated prior to the July 1st start date for us. I also wanted to note that our low-income tax exemption, if you recall last winter, we made a decision to change our bands that we apply a rate relief to. And that we anticipated would be an extra cost to the budget of $5,500, and it worked out to just under $2,000. And most of the people that would have received last year received this year as well, but just off a little bit from what our expectations were. I've also provided in Appendix A our financial statements for the end of July, and overall, our results are in line with our approved budgets. There are, you will note, some ups and downs, and I've highlighted that much of that is timing. We have quarterly billings, we have annual billings. Our overall budget is assigned on an annual basis. We, excuse me, we also wanted to advise you that some of our internal transfers are outstanding for accounting purposes. That's why it says preliminary July results. Doesn't impact our overall surplus because it's just moving something from admin to recreation or I want to say grants, but that's not it. Public Works. So it won't affect the bottom line in those areas. I did highlight though that in the analysis that our taxes are at 50% of the budget at July, mainly because, as you may be aware, we build our interim bill based on the current year's assessment value, last year's rate. So it's much closer than it would have been in the prior year to 50% of the overall anticipated 24-25 budget. All other areas in revenue are really around timing of when we receive funds. On the expenditure side, I did want to highlight that our fire protection service, the hydrant expense that is in there is for the full year. It's usually 50% of the year. So you'll see an adjustment for that next month. Public health and housing, as folks may recall, we are no longer responsible for housing costs from the province. We normally budget about $90,000. We budgeted $90,000 last year, and when the bill came in, it was over $150,000. So it was significantly higher than most years, and so that will be a cost to us in this fiscal year that we didn't anticipate. So I wanted to make sure that that was highlighted for you in the narrative. We also, you'll note that some areas are under budget, but we have some specific projects that will be happening this year that have not begun, which would be secondary planning, our assessment for the town hall, stormwater, and our arena feasibility study wouldn't be fully costed in there yet. So some of those areas are making our program admin budgets look under quite significantly because of the timing of when that work will begin. You also may have noted that our transfers from reserves on the revenue side and our transfers to reserves on the operating side, operating expense side are nil. And that generally those are accounting entries we do to allocate some of our operating revenue into those reserve accounts, and that will happen in the month of September. And we last year provided a full report of all of reserve accounts and their balances in October, so that'll happen for that. But nothing of concern there, it's just timing once again. So those are the areas I wanted to highlight on the statement of operations. I have some other points to speak about around capital and others. Would you like me to take questions on this statement first, Mayor, and then move on to the rest, or keep going?
Deputy Mayor? Okay.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
I'll just keep going. On the capital side, the capital report's before you. We have spent year-to-date, August 23rd, $1,530,000, representing about 21% of the budget that was approved. I had highlighted that the amount for protective services is skewed by the funding that was received at year-end around the guns and gang violence. So that $250,000 has skewed that. It would be 55% spent otherwise if we had known about it and incorporated it in the budget, and our overall total would still be at about 17%. You will note that many of the special project individual updates are embedded within Director Bell and Director Langel's reports, so I won't go into any more detail there unless there's specific questions. I also have included, as a separate agenda item, a request for an amendment to our capital budget, so we can talk about that when we get there.
All right. We'll take questions now on the Director's report. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Matthews, this may be more so directed at Councillor Gerard or Councillor Zabian, and it's with respect to the
finance department ceasing providing the contracted financial services. Excuse me, I recall that the town of Kentville had asked for a letter of sorts. I believe it was through the auditor, of which we have the same auditor, and I'm assuming that that letter was provided.
My understanding is that came in while I was on vacation in the last 2 weeks. I have not seen it, but perhaps Councillor Gerard or CIO Lawrence may be aware of its content.
Okay.
So, yes, we did receive a letter, and we did receive assurances from the fire department office manager and chair of the board that they can meet the requirements that are stipulated in the audit letter.
Thank you.
Councillor Gerard, was there anything you wanted to add to the CAO as...
I was unaware that the letter came in, and actually that was going to be my question.
All right.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions for the Director on the report before we move to the business at hand? All
So
right, go ahead, please.
I have, the next agenda item is a request for additional capital funding. And just to kind of bring us back a few months, we did move forward with a 5-year capital investment plan of $7,726,825, which was approved on March the 25th. At that time, there were several projects that we anticipated concluding at the end of March, and we would have embedded those in our forecast. Any anticipated expenditure in the forecast, if it was funded through a reserve or debt, we would have assumed that money was removed from those funds when I put forward what we anticipated our debt ratio would be and where our reserve balances would be at the year end. So we assumed all those forecasted expenses as if they were going to be realized. Some of those projects, and you can see 5 3 projects that are listed here. So it would be the Minor Marsh Trail and signs and line painting and the tennis court windscreens. Those items did not, all of the invoices did not come in by year end. And as a result, we couldn't capitalize them. So they were still work in progress. We capitalized them this year. Once they're capitalized is when we need to assign the funding to them. So I'm requesting the adjustments to the budget for those 3 items. As well, we had an electric booster station that started a few years ago that I could not trace back an approved operating budget for through the budget files that I had access to. And that work has continued into this year. We also, I just spoke of the police technology, the grant from the Guns, Gangs, and Violence Fund, that $250,000 that we were not aware of until March 31st. So in total, there's $354,400 worth of capital equipment and projects that we would like approval to continue to move forward with as approved budget items in 24-25. Of course, as I said, if we're asking for funding from the reserve, it would have already come out of the reserve. So when you look at the budget implications, I've done a reconciliation for you that will show our approved budget is $7,726,825. In June, council approved the movement of the plow truck from 2026 and moving the sweeper to 2026. As well, we have the Rec Hub heat pump that was approved, subtotaling a change of $313,000. We're bringing forward an additional $354,400, which would bring our revised 24-25 capital investment plan of $7,768,225. You also, I've noted there that we did receive a grant of $1,730 for the Rec Hub heat pump to go towards that $7,000 anticipated cost. The recommendation, therefore, would be that Council Advisory Committee approve a capital budget addition of $354,400 to be funded $10,000, a withdrawal of $10,000 from the Town of Kemptville General Capital Reserve for those that were previously approved, a withdrawal of $20,000 from the Town of Kemptville General Capital Reserve for a previously unapproved capital expenditure, grants of $304,558 from the Green Infrastructure Fund and the Guns, Gang, and Violence Fund, and debt of $19,842 for a previously approved, partially grant-funded capital expenditure.
All right, thank you very much for that recommendation and fulsome report, Director. So taking your recommendation and turning it into a motion for council, our motion would be that CAC recommend approval to council at the October 1st, 2024 meeting of council for the addition of the 2024-25 capital investment plan of $354,400 with funding sources as detailed in the report. Deputy Mayor, thank you for the second. Councillor Zabian, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend approval to council at the October 1st, 2024 meeting of council for the addition to the 2024-25 capital investment plan of $354,400 with funding sources as detailed in the report. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councillor Girard.
Thank you, Worship. Quick question, the electric booster station, is that the one that's out in the parking lot?
Correct.
And that is, we charge for that or somebody charges for that? It's not free?
I see Director Bell shaking his head.
That's my understanding. Director Bell was here, I think, a little.
It is now fully powered by NS Power, hasn't been commissioned. We need to commission it, ideally, perhaps even this week. But yes, your answer is we passed that motion well over a year ago that it's charge per use.
Okay.
Essentially it's to cover the cost of the power and the admin fees that we pay to the supplier for the service.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to recommend approval to council at the October 1st, 2024 meeting of council for the addition to the 2024-25 capital investment plan of $354,400 with funding sources as detailed in the report. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Director.
So next up, Director of Planning, Darren Shoup, with the Planning and Development report.
Good evening. I have to raise this a little bit.
It's magical.
Slowly. That's probably. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is my first opportunity to deliver a monthly report. So I don't have a format down yet necessarily, but what we've tried to do is return to a little bit to the former formats where we're showing some development statistics, talking about some of the key events that we've been running over the past month, and giving an overview of basically any major news that we're putting out as a department. So today is basically my 2-month, I'll talk about me for just a second. I'm 2 months in, and I've had an opportunity through the various applications that we've seen today, one of which we talked about this evening, to kind of review our policies, plans, strategies, and procedures, and looking forward to moving towards returning to a state of normal operations going forward. I'm part of that plan. We're also looking to bring in next week Ben Kroll to work with us, eventually moving him into a development officer sort of position. This is a 6-month term, I should mention, to help cover ourselves while Kirsten is away on mat leave. So he can also, where Matt covered for us for the last little bit over the summer, Ben's going to take on that role as well as receiving applications. And he also has some GIS skills too, so there's some mapping that he can do for us over the next 6 months. So looking forward to having him, and of course myself and Lindsay, and eventually Kirsten coming back as well, to bring a little more robust planning processes to the town. What else do I have? So the staff capacity, talk about reviewing the things, but myself, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around the idea of having more strategic thinking going forward as well. The operations in the West End, we've had a lot of those R5, large R5 lots which were once considered sort of on a holding pattern, now they're coming in play more so. So we want to think about how we want to do that as we go forward, and that will be part of what I'm doing with council and staff and the public going forward as well. So looking forward to all that. I won't read to you right from my report, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now or in the future.
Councillor Zabia.
Thank you. Thanks, Director. I have a question. I brought something forward, and I'm going to give you a little bit of homework. About almost 2 years ago, and I know I've spoke to the CAO, it was before his time. We've got in our MPS, we've got amenity space requirements for residential, and specifically in the commercial zone downtown. There's a lot of older buildings, and I think I read in a report that Alicia's going to bring up later, there's a mention of kind of putting that on pause, I guess, which I was happy to see, but I'm wondering if you could pull that RFD out, because I know there's a lot of developers downtown that have older buildings, and they've only got so much space, and they don't have any amenity space to provide. They'd have to lose more of their space where they could put in more units, more residential units. And if anyone's watching, it's not me, but there's quite a few downtown that would like to put apartments up, and they're kind of stuck between that item. So it'd be nice to look that up and see if we can work with that and work with these developers moving forward. And that's my question. Thank you. Yeah.
So that's certainly, and I'll do my homework. But I've also had an opportunity to speak to a couple developers on that note since I've been here. So that's been good, and it's helped inform what we've put in, and Alicia will talk about that shortly. My thought on that is when we're downtown commercial, it's built, like 19th century, 20th century design for our downtown. Amenity spaces probably weren't thought about then. We are a town that's blessed by many parks and public spaces. So perhaps that's something we can think about as we go forward, and there may be ways of opening up housing opportunities, as you said, Councillor, in this downtown area. So.
That'd be great, thank you.
Director, on that note, that request for decision did come to council, and council directed staff to, I think the vote was with regards to amending the policy on that, and so that went back to staff, and I believe it went back just as Kirsten was going on her mat leave. So if you look at that January, February timeframe, you will see the details that were directed by council on that matter, and the work that Kirsten was doing in amending that policy.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Shute, for your report. So, happy 2-month anniversary.
Thank you.
And you mentioned about the strategic thinking around R5. So just based on some of the meetings that you've been to, the public participation in the last 2 special CAC and the council meeting tonight, have you given any sort of thought to what a secondary planning strategy might look like in the West End as it relates to our MPS and LUB? I'm just wondering if you might be able to comment on that. Slightly.
Granted, it's early days, and I was listening while I was running around with the mic at the public participation meeting. Some of the concerns about having adequate commercial or industrial lands available in the town for future development. We hear about stormwater, of course, and how that should be integrated into our design and how our thinking with these developments. We also have the housing need and the types of housing that we think we'll need going forward. So, I mean, the early days of me thinking about it, like 2 months in, looking forward to an opportunity to address that in greater depth with council and the public to see what is needed in that area. Having some of the strategy pieces around it, perhaps for economic development, or that's certainly a piece that we can look at. We have some of the housing strategies now, which is important, but there's also the commercial development that's key for the town as well. So that's something that I'm keeping in mind, and I'm happy to have those conversations as we move towards having a new plan in place.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Zabian, I see your light. However, Councillor Huntley hasn't spoken yet. Councillor Huntley.
Hi, Director. Just in the development permits, it shows 4 development permits were issued in the month of August. Is that low?
I would have to go back and check to see what I would think it's a little bit low.
Yeah, okay.
Again, there tends, in my experience, that we tend to get a rush earlier in the year.
Okay.
Like leading into construction season, basically.
Okay.
A lot of construction can happen year-round these days because of our weather patterns, but we tend to see more in the early spring, late winter, early spring.
Okay, thank you.
So, Director, on that note, formerly we used to get, I'm going to say the annual comparison with last year, and then the total for the year, recognizing that development permits are done on an annual basis as opposed to fiscal, and it just gave us I guess a position to know what was going on from that perspective. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Director, I have one more question, and I may loop in the CAO and maybe Chief Smith if he doesn't mind. Just wondering, I noticed here the tables in Center Square, and I have to ask, is there any update on any other plans in there as we move forward? I know we've had a lot of trouble over the last 2 months in there, and I go back every evening. I should join the police force, but I'm back there every night, and I do see there's still kind of trouble in there in the evenings, and I'm wondering, are there any other plans to prevent, or I know we've disabled, I think, the Wi-Fi at a certain time or certain days, and I don't know if the power's been disconnected or not, but it still kind of is a problem, and I have a lot of people that I see on a day, as you can imagine, and they come in, and a lot of people are scared to go through Center Square. So I'm just wondering if there's any more plans moving forward, or if there's anything you could speak, CAO, to that, or any of you, I guess.
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, we have ordered and received, I believe, 9 steel tables that will be anchored down, 3 with accessible locations on them. Last update I had, Public Works and Economic Development Coordinator we're locating exactly where they would go so that we keep our lanes for accessibility and everything else open. We have looked at limiting the power access at night, but the right solution for that is about a $5,000 solution. We've pretty much spent as much as we can on that area this year. The right solution would involve having it integrated into a timer system. The ad hoc solution will be to have somebody go over and put plates on at night and take them off in the morning. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I know Chief Smith may want to speak to the increased visibility of KPS in the area. I know that when we've gone over at lunchtime, we've certainly noticed a larger police presence. And I believe there's new lighting that is scheduled to go in to better illuminate the area. So that is what I'm aware of currently. We're always open to new suggestions. So Chief Smith, I don't know if you have anything to add?
Yeah, I can speak briefly on it. Yeah, obviously increased presence in the square. Of course, there's the perception that there's always something going on, something wrong in the square. That's not always the case. There's obviously a lot more people hanging out in the square, and the tables are being used. Obviously, that's not against the law to do that. The other things, I agree, yes, you know, the doing drugs, open alcohol, fighting, all that kind of stuff. Yes, those are issues we need to deal with and we are addressing. But the other parts, it's tough to deal with. You're dealing with a space that's been put there and a lot of work has been put there over the years to make it inviting for people to come and sit and enjoy the space. So, yeah, we've increased our, I don't think that was my cell phone that just beeped. We've increased our presence, which I think has already been, I think, quite well. We spent a lot of time on the block. Actually spent 2 hours out there today myself. But it's something that's gonna take some time, and I don't know that picnic tables changing and internet are gonna fix that. We have, sorry, this isn't quick. We have a town that is very supportive in so many ways, right? We have all those amenities here that those people that are coming to the town to utilize, and it brings them to Kentville. So I think we gotta be creative with the way that we adjust and deal with these things, so.
So the other piece that we have started to investigate is an integrated camera solution. We would need to start with, and I think our strategic initiatives coordinator is looking at what policies exist out there to enable it. We would want it to be a deterrent, not necessarily well signed, and we would need to make sure that we investigated infrastructure that will actually do what we require it to do. That is more in the planning stage, but that is in the early days where we are. I can say that I've attended a number of events in Center Square. They seem to be well attended, and staff have gone over on at least 3 occasions at lunchtime. You see a lot of family, a lot of use of the site. It is a well-used area. So.
Yeah, and thank you for that. My concern though is more so with the evenings. And I know we have a 10 p.m. curfew, and I don't expect Kentville Police to sit there every night. They have other stuff to do. It's just in the evenings when I'm there, and it's almost every evening if anybody wants to find me, you go in and there's vile language, and you hear it almost every night. Some nights it's quiet, and there's residential living kind of in the square too. There's some residential there, and I just don't think it's fair to them. So, you know, cameras may be a great alternative, be something to look at for sure. And I will say that anytime Kentville Police are called, they're very prompt, and, you know, we appreciate that for sure. But it's just, it's unfortunate in the evenings when it's like 10:30 at night and there's, you know, you hear a lot of language and it is quite loud. And the daytime, I am not bothered by that because you can't people, you know, spot zone people or people zone people. That's not fair to the public, but it's just the evenings when it's kind of disruptive. Thank you.
And the last piece that I would add to that is it's a relatively small number of people that are causing the issues. I know that when we've had issues with cigarette butts and others, when we sent staff over, we've had individuals that will help us pick it up. So I don't want to cast the net wide and say that everybody is creating the problem. It's probably in the area of 10 to 12 people that are creating the issue, and it shines on everybody. So.
Thank you.
Councillor York.
Thank you, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but your report highlighted all of the activities that have been going on in Center Square, and I think the juxtaposition of the liveliness that we experience in there Monday to Friday through events and through all of the coordinated effort that's coming out of Parks and Recreation and out of the planning department has created the liminal space, that weird transition between how lively it is at 5:30 and then how stark it can seem, not because of any wrongdoing necessarily, but because of just the juxtaposition of lively daytime stuff that just doesn't happen in the evening. So I did want to highlight that some of the things that we're feeling might just be because we have created such a robust program that happens in there so often that it creates that unintentional liminal space after dark. Secondly, I did want to highlight, through the police commission, I receive a lot of phone calls. I've received fewer lately, which is great. But one of the things that was a common thread throughout was how the approach that we have had through the Kemptville Police Service, through Chief Smith and his staff, and through the planning department, is the response to what was felt concerned by Kemptville residents was one that was done with dignity and respect, and it was certainly felt by the individuals in Center Square, but also the people who work in and around Center Square as well. So I do want to highlight that we do a really good job of hearing concerns. It's a very royal we. You do a very good job hearing the concerns and then taking that on with dignity and respect. So I do want to thank you on behalf of myself, but also from the people that I'm hearing from in the community as well. So thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Well, thank you. Just not to keep it going, but, I just want to express, caution about taking too strong a solution. We did create a public space, and we want to encourage people to be there. I think that we have to, realize that with having public spaces, we're going to get, a little bit of poor behavior once in a while. But taking, a hard-armed approach, and I'm glad we're not doing that, just sends the problem elsewhere in town. And, when you attack one area, then people just move to another area. And I think Center Square is a good area. At least it's not happening out in front of storefronts and in doorways and things like that. So I'm glad we're not, taking a strong-armed approach, and I just don't want to, I want to caution us for doing that sort of thing. So thank you for everything that's going on, and lighting probably is the best thing we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Director, that seems to be all on that part of your report. I see you've got are you speaking to the short-term rentals, or are you handing it off?
We're bringing up Alicia for that part.
Okay.
We gotta do that's gotta come down, this goes to Marty, all over the place.
Say when.
Look at that. That's great. Thank you. All right. Good evening, folks. Just in support of Darren, given that it is the 2-month anniversary, yay! I'm just speaking to the short-term rentals, as that was something that was started prior to Darren joining our team. So just on his behalf, given what the last 2 months have looked like for him. This report is for informational purposes mainly, just to keep you up to date, and mainly for constituents as well. In case they have questions, you're welcome to direct them to this report as well, if that's helpful for you. So in regards to short-term rentals, there has been changes from the province. And this is really a result of an announcement that was made in 2023 that there would be new regulation changes coming. And if you are aware, short-term rentals used to be operated under the Department of Communities, Culture, Tourism, and Heritage. I'm looking at Craig. I think I got it right. Look at that. It used to be under those folks, but now it's transitioned to the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So their intention to regulate is very different than a tourism perspective. So what the province has released, that their intention with these regulations is to increase the long-term housing supply, given that many short-term rental units are eligible for long-term housing. So that's what you see on a lot of their press releases and kind of the why behind doing this. So if you have folks in community who are maybe frustrated with the changes and curious as to why it's happening, perhaps that gives you the one-liner as to why it's coming from the province, and that this is the root cause of why they're initiating this and why now. So they have opened up the registration for folks for the 2024-2025 season. And this was announced just after our CAC in July, and you received communication through email at the time that this was coming. And they did meet with municipal staff to speak to them of here's the process, and they let us know at the time that registration would open in August with expectations that the short-term rentals are registered by the end of September, which is a pretty tight turnaround for not only the folks who need to register, but also municipal staff who may have to go through processes. So really the big pieces that have changed for across the province is that to register, any short-term rental operators now have to provide a proof of compliance with municipal bylaws. And short-term rentals such as Airbnbs or inns who were registered prior to 2020 under the Tourism Act have already gone through that process. So they are good in this process. They just have to resubmit. But any of the rentals that we might see on Airbnb or Vrbo, I think I'm saying it right, yeah, okay, I'm getting nodding heads, on ones like that, now have to register in a different way. And so some rates can range from $50 to $2,000. $2,000 is more so what you're going to see in HRM or CBRM in the Sydney area. And then there is a really large chunk of dollars if you are unregistered. So I think that's their key kicker to get you to register. How does this impact Kentville? So from a Kentville perspective within our municipal planning strategy, we do regulate bed and breakfasts and inns. However, those are not applied to short-term rental accommodations such as Airbnbs. And at this time, there are no known inns or bed and breakfasts in Kentville. If there's any secret ones, we're about to find out. But at this stage, if someone was to come forward who is operating a bed and breakfast, we would have to go through a full zoning letter for those folks to ensure that they meet our MPS. But for folks who have operational Airbnbs, etc., they do have to come into town hall and they receive a letter of compliance, which you can see in the appendix in this report. I will note that things have been changed, so this report couldn't be printed and submitted as proof of compliance. The province has our official form to cross-reference every form they receive with Darren's signature as well. So folks are invited to come in and have a conversation with us, and if our hours don't work for them, we'll work with them to find a time to support them. And so that is the process at this stage. If you have folks asking you questions, feel free to direct them into town hall, even the info@kentville.ca, that comes through Carla. She'll get them through the right spot. But as we'll note, this is much easier on us as Kentville than it is on some other jurisdictions who have more intense regulations. And I will name, especially from a council and mayor perspective, you may be hearing it from your counterparts that it's very hard for other municipalities to keep up with the inspections required to actually provide proof of compliance. But this is just an update, and if at any stage this can be a piece we point back to if we reconsider what regulations look like for those. But at this time, that's just some information for you. If you have any questions, both myself and Darren are here.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Alicia.
Yeah.
And because this wouldn't apply to Kentville, is the province paying what it costs the municipalities to get involved in this little tax grab they have?
That's a great question, and it came up on the calls they hosted us with as well. So at this time, there's no financial support for the municipalities who are really going through that more rigorous process. What's been offered from the province in this process, is a data sharing agreement. So they will share any of the locations that we have Airbnbs in our community after going through registration. So each year they'll send us an updated list. This is what they're offering back at this time. From what I understand, a lot of other jurisdictions are giving some pretty robust feedback on how their experience has been to the province.
And one last question.
Yeah.
What is the benefit to this?
I'll come back to that initial statement that the benefit the province hopes from this is to increase long-term housing. So properties that are, what they're looking for is Airbnbs or Vrbos or those short-term rentals that are located with the primary residence and trying to decrease standalone units or standalone homes that could be used for rentals. That's what we've been told as staff from the province, that this is their hope, to reduce short-term rentals that are used just for those, sorry, I'm repeating my words, used as only short-term rentals, but to transfer them to long-term rentals. That is what they've named the intention of this process.
I understand that, and I'll just say this. you're just the messenger. But when government steps in and starts telling businesses what they can and can't do, I mean, are they gonna mandate that, carpenters now have to build apartment buildings instead of, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I just think it's overstepping, but anyways.
One thing I will name is now that it's transferred departments, it is John Lore, Minister John Lore, who's the point of contact. So if you are getting feedback from folks and you want to pass it along, that's a good avenue to do it, where within the municipality, we're staff to staff and staff who are just operating this operation. So if you are hearing those concerns, you're welcome to send folks to direct it that way as well.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you very
worries.
much.
Are there any further questions for Alicia on this matter? Great job, thanks.
So Director Craig Langell, if you want to present the recreation report, thanks.
Mayor and Council. So in front of you, you would have the Director's Report for July and August. I just wanted to touch on 3 items. The first one is grants. So staff were able to secure over $42,000 from ACOA. This money is being used for trail development, for fixing some of the bridges that were in the gorge. And then they also secured another $5,000 for CCTH, Community Culture, Tourism, Heritage. This is going towards the conditions assessment feasibility study. Just to note that we had already received $10,000 last fiscal from the same grant, so it's a total of $15,000 to go towards the conditions assessment. The other item I wanted to touch on was the Ravine Trail. Council and Mayor, you would have received my email, just that after the storm in July, one of the bridges have been compromised and condemned at this point. Staff will look to find an alternative road around the bridge, and we hope to have the space back open to the public in the near future. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on the last page, which is programs. Just wanted to mention that with all the programming that's listed on the back, we had over 1,600 participants through our programming from June all the way through August. That's for all of our outreach programming, which Laura and Becca would have presented on. It includes swim lessons, tennis lessons, aquafit, and our summer camps. And then the last piece is, just want to remind council that how important the Spike Fund is, and the amount of money that was used this year for programs that goes towards what I'm just talking about now, where there is $4,000 to $5,000 used to support local families. So that is my report. Any questions?
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the director? Councillor Zabian.
Thanks, Mayor Snow, and thanks, Director Langell. Just a question. I noticed in the finance report that the camp and outreach revenues were higher than expected or higher than budgeted. So I think you had written there that there was 101 registered for day camps. Is that number now, compared to the year before, is that a little lower, or we're usually full capacity, right? Is it 40 or 35?
Registration wise?
Yeah.
Registration would be lower this year. So
Okay.
we did 4 weeks, we had 101 registrants, so we're looking at 25. But what you should keep in mind is that the first week was very low.
Right.
Second week was kind of in the middle, and the last
Yeah.
2 weeks we filled. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we did was to offset some of the costs, we didn't bring in all of our staff from when we had lower registrations. Also, there was a lot of competition in the community for summer camps.
Right, yeah,
a
there
lot
was.
of different options, so that would have also brought down some of the numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Langell. I'm just wondering, now that the pool is closed, if there's any study or work being planned to fix the leak that where the water's going out, to do that.
Yeah, so we completed the scoping in June, and they did not find any leaks in the piping. So the only real option is to dig up the pool deck to find the leak, or to continue with the operations as is. But that'll be a report that we can bring back to council in the near future as well.
Okay, so not the main water leaks underneath the pool, or water pipes under the pool?
Correct, yeah.
So it's somewhere along the deck?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor York.
Thanks. I want to chat about bridges. The first being the one in the ravine, which is now condemned, which is a very scary word with bridges. Is there a timeline on that to be replaced?
CEO, is it the municipal relief fund? Is it
So we're having some discussions right now with Department of Municipal Affairs and EMO to find out what we can claim under the disaster relief fund associated with the July 11th flood. There's a piece on that that speaks to building back better, and we want to make sure that we don't undersubscribe. So right now, we have what I'll call a placeholder in with Municipal Affairs, and Alicia, along with Director Bell and Director Langell, have been identifying any of the potential pieces of infrastructure that we could submit. We have been in discussions with John Lore's office, and it's in the back and forth stage right now. So on a bridge with a cost of about $150,000, we want to make sure that we maximize our ability to seek grants for that, if that answers your question. Doesn't give you a time frame, but
It gives me a cash flow frame, and that's great. The second bridge is the one at the Walter Wood Playground. I know we are replacing it, or looking at replacing it, but have we given thought to moving it down to the other clearing where it had traditionally, historically, whatever, where it had always been before? Because it's not right at the outflow of a water pipe, and it might help with the eroding underneath. Speaking as if I know what I'm talking about, but I think you understand what I mean.
I do, I know.
Okay.
Yes, there is thought given to that, and I've had discussions with Dave as well for the best approach to, for best replacement. And we also put it through the same fund to hopefully get that bridge covered as well.
Great. That's it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor York actually asked the question about the bridge and the ravine, so I can skip that one. My next point is not a question, it's just a comment. So 150 programs that outreach staff planned and facilitated over the summer. And I heard from a lot of folks in this community how they were just over the moon with regards to like the aqua size, the swimming lessons, the tennis, even the swim with the dog events. Like, so I just really wanted to say thank you to you and your staff, because it was recognized, it was noticed, and people were talking about how many programs really went on this summer. So thank you to you and your team.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, you're welcome.
Councillor Zabian, I see you. However, Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Langell, I see there's a note here for the construction of the new stairwell to the cenotaph has been delayed due to contractor not being able to complete the work. Do you know why he can't complete the work?
I think the new term is ghosting people. So we went through the whole tendering process, and then when it came to coming up with the schedule, they never got back to us. So we gave them many follow-ups, and to the point where we said we just have to move on, and we moved to the next applicant, which is a local company. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Director, just one question. I noticed in your report about the COGS development in Habu Court. So are they looking for financial partnership with this green space or park?
Yeah, so we were approached 2 weeks ago to go up to the area, and they were willing to give up more space, to cover 50% of the cost, having those initial discussions on what it could look like to really create a wonderful space in there for the local community.
You just said they're gonna cover the cost, or they're looking for?
Not the whole cost, no.
Okay.
The initial discussion was how can we build the space up?
Okay.
We could provide financial support as well, and how can the town partner with us to make that work?
Thank you for that. I guess just a little note for council, that's where I guess development agreements would come in handy, because you'd have all that laid out with the developer, what you want for a green space, and then we wouldn't be burdened with any of those costs, right? Nothing to do with you, just a little side note there that might be helpful as we move forward. Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Yes, just on that, where is that green space to be located on that piece of land? Is it near where the mound of soil is, and there's a little cul-de-sac sort of thing that has a power box right in the middle of it? Is that what they're looking at?
That's that plus maybe potentially additional space, but
Maybe moving a little more towards the housing?
yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Director Langell, I guess I'm going to put you on the spot here,
Okay.
and it's time to do the commercial for the Spike Fund. So to folks that are watching and folks that are in the audience here, our Spike Fund takes care of a lot of folks, and this is a tax. You will get a tax receipt if you make a donation, and you can see Carla at the front desk or over to, I believe, still over at Recreation to make a donation. And can you tell us the sort of things that we're using that money for?
Yeah, the Spike Fund can be used for any individual that needs walking shoes to walk the trail. It goes towards family programs, pool passes, skating, whatever it might be. We also have now with Amelia, our new software system that we're using for booking and registration. You can now donate directly through the website. So it will pop up and ask if you'd like to donate as you're going through the registration process. So there's other ways to donate if you wish. But really, it's the community giving back to support those that are within the community that might not have the financial ability to be able to afford some of these programs.
All right, thank you very much for that. And you have one other matter for us.
Sure. The next item is the condition assessment and feasibility study. So council would have received our updated document, and it has been posted. The only update really to it is that within our discussion with DSRA, our consultant, we are looking for the costing on a twin pad arena to be added in for one of the options. So that is now added. So what the next steps are is our staff is going to host an open house for the community, providing all the different options that were given to us in this document. And it will provide the community an opportunity to provide their feedback on each option. And then we'll take this information and it will go to the new council for November for additional information. And a date will be determined here soon, and it'll be posted through our social media.
All right, thank you very much for that, Director. One of the questions that I'll throw at you is, and we've all seen the report, however, it's 120 some odd pages, and there's some pretty tough slogging through that. But what happens if we do nothing?
We would probably have to close in the future if there's major structural issues that have been identified. Now, if it doesn't mean that everything has to be completed, but there are definitely some major structural issues that need to take place.
All right. So the next question is, we know that there's been movement on a regional recreation facility, and we are seeing that, and we know that the first phase of it would be a pool. And there are timelines associated with that. So what is the most likely first day that we would be skating if there was a rink put there? And is that even a possibility, or is it even in the thought process?
It's a very good question. We are talking phase 1 right now, and phase 1 is not complete, and it's been a long discussion. If phase 1 was to go in place, we're probably looking at the 2030s, and then it's a full new discussion on phase 2. So, and that's the reason why the condition assessment was brought forward to begin with, because this facility is not going to last forever unless we provide updates to it, or phase 2 of the regional center.
All right, thank you very much for that. Council, are there any questions on or comments with regards to the arena report? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chief Marty Smith, if you want to present the police report or chief's report.
Good evening, Deputy Clerk, CAO, Council, and Mayor. I got to raise this up because I forgot my glasses, so excuse me. To get into the report, I actually may have to make an adjustment on something, and I did it online, but I don't think it would have been done in time for you guys to get it in your copies. So it's based on the calls for service. I'll take the blame for this because I decided to take responsibility of collecting some of this data myself before the meetings, and apparently I clicked the wrong button on one of them. So Our numbers for calls for service are a little off, not so much in June, but they were 321, but in July, I'd reported 291 and they were actually 378, which is obviously a huge increase. I'm not saying it's totally out of the ordinary because summertime, we tend to have more calls for service in our summer months. I did a stat sheet just to kind of see if we're on par for our average amount of calls per year, and we still are. So, having said that, I know how to do it now. So we had a little bit of training in the month of July. Some use of force training that's new to us. It involves jiu-jitsu training. So one of our new members went away on a use of force course, and he also took the jiu-jitsu training, which is, I haven't done it yet. I think the 13th is my first night to do it. So I hear it's very useful, useful tool for us as well. So some of the meetings that attended, and of course I'm reporting on July, so we're a little bit behind here, but as the Director of Finance mentioned, our virtual reality, which is $250,000 for this arcade game, that's going to teach us use of force, which we can't wait because we're getting trained on it next week. It's supposed to be amazing, and it's going to allow us to do a lot of more use of force things that we typically couldn't do, so especially with a smaller force. As again, this was the guns and gangs money that was given to us from the province. Camp Courage, I can't remember if I've talked about this before or not. I think I have. We had about I think it was at least 6 or 7 members that attended this week, or this 1 week event it basically happened in Halifax, Dartmouth, where it allows individuals to attend and take training from first responders, so policing, EHS, military, the list goes on. It's 7 days, it's free, it's fundraised by the board of Camp Courage, which has been going on, I think, for about 15 years. We just joined on this year to be a part of it, and it's pretty amazing the feedback that comes from it and the amount of people that actually go on to do this type of work. So we look forward to that again next year. To note something about our board, we started working on our strategic plan in the spring of this year, and today it just finalized, I hope, the last copy. It seems every time we look at it, we find something else. So that'll be something that we're going to share publicly. So that'll go out on our social media page, and it'll be linked to our police commission page, probably with this week or next week. So like I say, we'll make note of that. That's obviously open for the public to view, and we worked quite hard at it, and we're pretty proud of it. So as part of the chief, that's part of the project that we have to complete. It's part of my role on the board. So wellness event we had, as I mentioned in the past, we have our navigator applied for a grant, received money for wellness events. Each month we do one. This in July, it was a scavenger hunt within the office, which was not the typical scavenger hunt, but it was very, very good. Our team won. My team won, our team. And then we played soccer, baseball. Yes, it is, Councillor Maxwell. I forgot I'm not 15 anymore. But yes, a lot of fun. So this, every month we do something different. This month coming, we have a guy coming to discuss training, physical training, and how to do that, especially for people that work shift work and stuff. So it's working out very well. You'll notice calls for a navigator have been up. We've actually adjusted her schedule a little bit. She's working some evening shifts now. We found that that we see a need for it in the evening as well as not just during the daytime. So she's been coming out evening shifts as well, and she's reporting that a large majority of her referrals are from people that are not from the area, which is really not surprising, although it used to be mostly local people. I'll go on to some staffing stuff. I'm sure you've seen the invite, or I hope you did if you didn't, October 10th, 6 o'clock, the Kemptville Fire Hall. For the first time in over 1 year, I'm not excited at all, but the first time in over 1 year, we are officially fully staffed. It's been a long year, and we've made some great hires, and we're looking forward to introducing them to the families in the town. And so, in having said that, we have, I'm sure you've seen around. If you haven't, I think he's got 25 years in. Constable Mark Hall, he came from Calgary. Loves policing so much that he just couldn't retire. He wanted to come back. Constable Doug Stevens, who's also just starting this week, he came from Calgary as well. Constable Kane Anzavino, he actually came from Niagara. And then, of course, Constable Heather Campbell, which I'm sure you've seen on social media. If you haven't, she's local, and she just graduated, and she's accepted a position with us. Thankfully, these people have all come here for family reasons, so they have connections to our town. Any questions on my report? Apparently, the short, if anybody has any questions, speech doesn't work, so I'm going to give more detailed speeches now.
All right, are there any questions for the chief? Councillor York.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that our community crisis navigator is flexible and is opting to change her shift in order to accommodate the needs of the community.
Yep.
That's wonderful to see, although I would assume that having more of her in that type of position would be much more palatable than having somebody do gymnastics in order to accommodate the needs of the community that are ever growing. Would there be there are police departments or forces in the province who are currently sending invoices to the province for their time spent in ERs. Is there an appetite for the town of Kentville to be sending an invoice for the community crisis navigator position in order to fund additional community crisis navigator positions?
So to speak on the hospital thing, I think we have and I know this isn't your question, but we have a very good relationship with Valley Regional. So this was something we had issues with in the past, and we've worked through them. I'm not saying there aren't times that we spend too many hours there, but for the most part, no. As far as a navigator position goes, as you know, I've reached out to the province looking for extra funding as well, because I see there's a need for it. We see there's a need for it. The board sees there's a need for it. I actually believe there's a need to have that additional person to work the day and the evening. And that was kind of the idea. And honestly, the navigator was the one who asked, because she seen the need. It wasn't me asking her to change her schedule. But
I believe that.
Yeah. As we discussed earlier, the community is growing and growing in these areas. And although it's not policing, it's something we have to, like I said, we have to come up with ways to deal with. So, yes, I guess is the answer. Because there is a cost to it, right?
Absolutely.
And 378 calls in the month of July, they're increased. There are a lot of those calls that we go to, right? So we are working with Open Arms, and we've thrown some ideas back and forth, and there's some talk. We haven't talked about it at the board yet because we haven't met in a little while, but that I think will be beneficial and could help that scenario out even better. So, yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Thanks.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, just a couple questions. You note in there around some agency meetings, and you noted the portal and Open Arms and Homeless No More. So are you getting a sense from some of those organizations that they are making substantive changes with respect to the folks that are using their services?
Is this my meetings or the navigators' meetings?
Either or.
Okay. So yes, they're making changes. they seem like they're creating a lot of different positions in order to deal with it in a
Yes.
different way, like I
Yeah.
said. So yeah, I've seen, and that's something I want to talk to the board with about as well, is that they're looking at, they've already made one change and they're looking at another, which will then it should download some of that responsibility into the areas,
Okay,
not so much on the police.
not so much on the
Yeah.
police, okay.
There are a lot of times we get called to situations that are not police situations.
Sure.
It's because they have no idea who else to call, so.
I understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And you and I were chatting about this a little bit earlier today, about the receptacles for needles / Sharpies. Just wondering if you could comment on your thoughts on that, on having those introduced into this community?
I think that was something that was being worked on, I think. I'm not sure where that's at now, but
Okay.
I believe if they're in the area, hopefully people would, I'd rather see them in the receptacle than
Of
on
course.
the ground. Obviously,
Yep,
that's
agreed. Yeah,
are we seeing more than we'd like? Absolutely, seeing any's more than we'd like to
Sure.
see. But yeah, I would think that there would be a benefit in having them
okay,
in certain areas.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
CAO?
Through you, your worship, Director Langell, our Strategic Initiative Coordinator, Christie, may be able to provide some more information on where we are with needle receptacles, just to answer your question.
Sorry, Marty. This is high up. We have quotes on the receptacles, and we have, so on the actual units, which are about $2,000 a unit. And then we also have a quote from a company that actually retrieves all the sharps for you. So staff aren't ones responsible for grabbing them. So that's currently where we're at. We're going to continue to kind of assess it and work with Marty to see kind of where the areas where we need to be putting these receptacles.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Huntley?
Thank you. Chief, when you had talked about,
Just wait, just. Okay. Cage, you broke it. And talking loudly doesn't help because it doesn't go on the video. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break while we readjust, sorry. Sure.
So the screen had it shut down,
Oh, is that what it was?
it said within so many seconds.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So stop talking is what you're saying.
Oh, yeah, sorry. All right. Maybe you guys should.
So that's 1911, 5-minute break? Or, yes, sorry, 7:11. I saw the screen come on, but I wasn't paying attention to what it said.
That's just the TV shutting off, and that's not part of the
Okay.
That's just the TVs themselves.
Yes, our mics are still on. I don't want to try to shut them off. One minute.
The ones that are on are actually still on.
Councillor Huntley?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, I just had a question. Just had a question. When you talked about the Crisis Care Navigator,
Yep.
you said you were asking for funding from the province. What would it take to fund another Crisis Care Navigator full-time?
I could tell you in 2 seconds.
Okay.
Well, maybe a little more than 2, but.
All right, that's fine.
About 70,000.
Oh, that's higher.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Gerard?
This actually isn't for the chief, but it's for Director Langell, because when we were talking about sharps. So when they come back with the price on either A, the receptacles, or B, someone else collecting, is there a liability side on the town staff side that should be or could be factored into what if?
I think there's a OHS concern, and a union concern when staff are dealing with sharps. So when it came to OHS, and the issue came forward, what we're looking for from leadership is how to ensure that our staff are safe at all times, and then bring that forward to council for hopeful approval.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell?
Thank you. To kind of piggyback on Councillor Huntley's question, how much would it cost for another crisis navigator? I think you mentioned that our crisis navigator right now is seeing people that are outside of Kentville.
Correct, yeah.
So
No, sorry, I should rephrase that.
Okay.
She's not going outside of Kentville to see them. They come from outside.
Right, they
If
come
that's-
from outside,
they
yeah.
do,
No, that's what I mean.
Okay.
I understand that the county is looked after by the RCMP, but perhaps it would be a good idea for the county to pitch in some, if these people are coming from the county, to see our community crisis navigator, that, you know, they might fund at least half or more than half of another body to help out. It might be worth investigating.
Yep.
According to Brian Hurdle, they have lots of money. So, you know, this might be something to pursue.
All right. Well, it's one of those things.
Noted.
So Chief, I just want to let you know, I was on a meeting today, and it was with the Executive Council on Gender-Based Violence Bystander Intervention Project. So they rolled out of the Mass Casualty Commission, and believe it or not, they were talking about the success of the Kentville Police Force and our crisis navigator. What we're doing here, what our force and what you as the chief and your staff are doing is being heard far and wide, and the importance of it cannot be overstated. And I think that this is probably, there's probably never been a better time to go looking with our hand out for money from the province. You know, we hear it all the time, and we know that that DOJ has got funding, and particularly with the Mass Casualty Commission and the things that are rolling out of that. So this may be the time to you know, rest on our laurels and say, look how good we've done.
Yeah.
We can do better with more.
Yeah, the funding option that we did try, they said we didn't qualify for their criteria, right? So that was the hard part. I'm sure there's something out there. Hopefully we'll find it.
Right.
Apparently we have lots of good grant writers here.
Yep.
Yeah, it's obviously better to get the money from somewhere else if possible.
Exactly, exactly. Well, thank you very much for your report. And Councillor York, as the commission lead, do you have anything that you wanted to add for council?
Yeah. I am of the firm belief that the Community Crisis Navigator and the Kemptville Police Service and the work that they're doing, but largely through that portfolio, have reduced the caseload, and especially the recidivist caseload on officers. Secondly, I think the province needs to put its money where its mouth is when they say they want to do things like through the Mass Casualty Coalition, when we know that gender-based violence is a massive problem in the province, regardless of what regardless of what other people may say. There is a big problem in our province, and it's largely behind closed doors, which makes it very difficult. Having somebody like Ashley in a position where you can, with some level of anonymity, meet and have resources put in place is crucial it's crucial in our communities. And I think right now there is an opportunity to leverage money from the province, especially as it relates to the provincial mandates that are being tasked to municipalities and provincial mandates that are being purposefully and intentionally skirted by the province itself. I think there's probably money in health. I think there's probably money in justice. And I think the board will probably go looking for that money.
Thank you.
All right, Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Through you, Your Worship, Director Bell will provide the Engineering and Public Works report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll start, as I often do, with our Kemptville Water Commission. This is a sort of an update on a large capital works project that we approved under the Water Commission budget. We received 2 proposals for the first year of a multi-year residential water meter replacement program. We anticipate the program will take 5 years to completely replace all of the old mechanical manual read water meters with more accurate ultrasonic radio read meters, resulting in true quarter reads instead of the time-consuming manual reads twice a year and estimating the other 2. We expect to replace approximately, or I should say we expected to replace approximately 280 meters this year. But as an anomaly, this project came in under budget, and we will be able to complete at least 380 this year, keeping us on track for the 5-year full town-wide replacement program. Under sanitary sewer area service, nothing really under our own domestic sewer, but the regional force main replacement project managed by the municipality of Kings is well underway, with approximately 500 meters of the overall 1,500 meter project now installed. The anticipated completion date is mid-December, barring any unforeseen complications. An update on the stormwater management master plan. We received 5 proposals for the town-wide stormwater management master plan. It's a handful. And they were reviewed, evaluated, and scored by the engineering department, with the successful firm being Dillon Consulting Limited. Their proposal price was $106,661 plus HST, and we were successful in securing $50,000 in funding from the Provincial Flood Risk and Infrastructure Investment Program, known as FRIP, to help offset the cost of this important study. So that's going to get underway immediately. Award was as I mentioned, was notified to the firm just last week, and we're in the process now of getting that contract signed, and we'll be kicking it off at the end of the week, at least with a virtual meeting, followed up by there'll be a public meeting, most likely at the fire hall later this fall, to talk about certainly the hotter topic areas throughout town. Under projects, start with capital works. Many of our capital works projects are either completed or well underway, including such key projects as listed them under completed with minor deficiencies. There's a number such as the McDonald Avenue subdivision street and services rehabilitation project. That was a 3-year project, finishing this year with the top lift of pavement. So that project is completely done at this point in time. The Elm Street sanitary sewer replacement project is complete with some paving deficiencies left to come. Belcher Street sidewalk upgrade, again, complete with some landscaping deficiencies. And Public Works equipment purchase, 2 pieces of key equipment were purchased, the 2-ton plow, salt, and dump truck, and the replacement pickup truck under this year's capital investment program. For projects under construction, key one is the Condon and Park Street Storm Sewer Project. This project has been sort of paused these last few weeks due to the delay of the supply and delivery of a key piece of infrastructure, a very large manhole that will be placed essentially where they had stopped at the bottom of the asphalt down to the senior field and park shed. But they're back on site, mobilized today, and as of tomorrow, we'll be back laying pipe and setting that large manhole later this week. The downtown sidewalk project, or AT project, also been on hold for a bit with some scheduling issues, but they're back in town as of today. Sort of the home stretch they will be completing in the next couple weeks, back to where they started at the beginning of summer on Webster Street, so sort of chasing its tail around the block and finishing that last stretch of new curb and sidewalk. There's a few catch basins to replace along that stretch, so once those are in and the curb is poured, they'll focus on sidewalk and tidy that project up for this year. Still in the design and pre-construction phase is the D.E. Hiltz Connector Road project. It's been recommended certainly by the contractor, and I agree with their recommendations that a winter 24 or early 25 tender is the best time of year to attract bids and competitive bids. So the design is at the sort of 90% stage now. So once that is completely tender ready, it will be ready to go late 24, early 25 for 25 construction season, anticipated to be a 2-year project. So construction in 25 and 26. Another update on another capital project, a key one, a replacement higher capacity storm pump has been ordered for the storm system at the dike near Shanix. This will allow us to send the original non-rebuilt pump away for recertification and upgrades for increased capacity, leaving a spare pump on the shelf once that one is returned. So we expect delivery of this new pump within the next few weeks. Should have it certainly by the end of September. The catch basin at the corner of Palmer and Park Street sort of been attracting some attention as of late. This has been a traffic and safety concern for quite some time. It's scheduled to be replaced by a contractor in the next few weeks. This project requires coordination with Nova Scotia Power to hold the nearby pole, traffic control to close the south lane of Park Street, and a medium-sized excavator, making it too complex for our own forces to do in-house. As I mentioned in the past, this is one of many galvanized steel catch basins or storm manholes built in the late 70s, early 80s that Public Works and hire contractors have had to replace in recent years. We continue to see more failures of the dozens of remaining galvanized catch basins throughout town, resulting in the holes in the asphalt next to the catch basin as the soil under the asphalt sifts into the failing catch basin. Between Public Works and hired contractors, we will get the worst ones done this construction season, but we will plan for a larger contracted replacement under the next multi-year capital investment program. An update on the public washroom and bike shelter. This project was tendered as a design build project, which included a small 1-compartment accessible washroom and a roofed over but open air bike shelter. We only received one proposal at a cost of $197,100, including the non-recoverable portion of the HST. The budgeted amount of this capital project was $80,000, where you expect something of that size to be. So it has been shelved, and alternative forms of construction are being considered for next year, including funding opportunities. Webster Street bike lane, the line painting was refreshed and delineators were reinstalled back a month or more ago. Well, the painting was just a few weeks ago. So additional bike lane separators in the form of rectangular planters were purchased under the ICIP, or Green Infrastructure Fund, and will be utilized starting next year, improving both safety and beautification to the downtown. And those are sort of the key parts of my report.
All right, Director, thank you very much for that report, and we do have some questions. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow, and thanks, Director Bell. I have a comment and two questions. Just around the public washroom, I agree that's an outrageous number, I think, for a little facility. I would hope, and I hope if anybody, that whatever the state of the new council looks like, and I wish everyone well, I hope they would possibly look at maybe having that washroom facility in Center Square where it'd be a little more accessible for the public. It'd kind of be in our core, downtown core, and whatever that looks like, you know, and maybe a new council will strategically plan that, but that would be nice. The question, I just have two questions. One is about the stormwater plan. You mentioned a public meeting. So are you looking for the public to kind of identify some more areas, or are these areas already identified?
As part of the engagement with the consultant, they'll be meeting with town staff, public works staff, engineering staff, but we feel it's worthwhile having a public meeting. Most likely that the fire hall makes the most sense, so that folks can, we'll have some maps and different things available, so they can express, in a constructive manner to the consultant where key ideas or key areas are that are that are of highest concern. They're looking at, this is going to be a multi-month project. They'll be bringing a proposal to council, a new council, sometime in the new calendar year, but the final report will be around the same time we're probably setting capital budget priorities in the new year. So we're looking at probably February for a final report from the consultant.
Okay, no, that's, yeah.
Based on that. But no date set yet for the any kind of public meeting, but like I said, we're having a kickoff meeting with the consultant. I believe it's Thursday this week.
Okay. No, I think that's great. The public meeting's great. And I just have one question about McDougall Heights. There was a drainage issue there, I think reported last summer, kind of, I think the second house on the left going in. Just wondering if there's any update on that. I think you had made a site visit, or somebody did, or it might have been Richard
We've
Boyd.
made a site visit. We've done some work with our camera. We have a storm sewer camera. That pipe was extended beyond its original location. And again, some of that is the galvanized steel pipe that has certainly a useful life, and a product we don't use anymore. Neither highways or towns, municipalities use that product typically because of the salt and deterioration that it sort of, when it fails greatly. We're going to be removing and replacing a section of that pipe on that property. It's a town easement, but it is, in amongst a residential area, so.
And any idea when that might, just because the residents been inquiring, or maybe reach out and.
Yeah, I did see actually just late this afternoon an email from the homeowners, and we'll be letting them know, but we will be doing something before, certainly this fall.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councillor Huntley.
Thank you. Director Bell, first of all, thank you for getting that catch basin to Palmer and Park Street done. That is definitely a danger spot right there. The one thing that you had talked about, looking after the worst ones, the catch basins. So here's a funny question. Do you know how many are the worst ones? And is there some sort of map that you would have and you could identify these 7 are built in the 60s, that's probably it, or,
Well, there's certainly dozens that are made of that material.
Yep.
And we've got catch basins that were done, with a mixture of a galvanized bottom and a concrete top, or womanized lumber tops,
Yes,
and lots
yes.
of different materials used, which you wouldn't use necessarily today, that, as they start to break down and the soil sifts into the catch basin, that's where you see the asphalt fail, typically
Yes.
within the first 2 or 3 feet next to those catch basins, and cause sinkholes. So they're a risk to vehicles, but even more so to pedestrians. So yeah, we've got a priority list of certainly, 6 really bad ones, but the numbers are, it seems like this year in particular we've seen more and more. And part of that is a function of the, when you have the extreme rain events, and those pipes are flowing full, that's when it pulls that soil in and it might take a month to show up, and that's when the asphalt on a hot day will start to give way, and you see that
Okay.
hole next to the catch basin. So
Thank you.
we've got no less than 6 that need to be done, this fall for sure.
Okay. And last question would be, up on Grant Street, the walkway that goes to the gorge. I'm wondering, what's the plan on?
Not sure, it's a
ETA?
combination of Public Works on the street side, but Parks and Rec on the trail side. I
Okay.
don't know what the plan is on that. Director Langell has an answer.
That's a part of the AT plan. So the Grand Street connecting into the gorge, which will then take you up to Dolly Hills.
Yes.
Where there was some water failure.
So,
Yeah.
okay, but no ETA on?
No ETA, I don't
Yeah,
think on this,
okay.
no.
Okay.
It'll remain closed then for the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Director Bell. Thanks for your report. The section there where you talk about the Condon and Park Street, the storm sewer project. I know that it is somewhat complicated, and I know that there's words like velocity and things like that in it. But I have had different folks around town asking me about that particular project, and I certainly can't explain it, but I can use words like velocity and water and larger and smaller pipes. So can you just give not a long, detailed outline of it, but
Promise.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I just mean, just a succinct, because I know there's a lot to that one. I've spoken with the mayor about it and how the engineering of it was done, and it's quite,
It is,
thank you.
it is. It's a very large pipe, and it looks, ominous, if that's the right word, but it's a large pipe certainly for a reason. That pipe is 5 feet in diameter, where they started at the bottom, and this system, as you know, or I think everyone knows, is dry now. So it's not right now as they lay uphill. It's not, won't be live until we make the final connection, which is still several weeks down the road. But that pipe is laid at a very flat grade, minimum grade, from where it starts there at the near the park shed and into the south ditch of the trail, of the Harvest Moon Trail on the south side of behind, ultimately exiting into West Main Street. So that pipe is large. It has a very wide fanned out head wall that will, when the water hits that, the water will not be a waterfall. It'll be a fanned out outlet into the trail ditch. And obviously it looks concerning to the residents that that back on it. It's also a work in progress. There's nothing flowing through that, and there won't be until everyone's satisfied, from the designers to the inspectors doing that work. But there's more work to be done on the ditch itself, on the exit. There's more rock to go in there, and ditching is part of the project to take it farther to the outlet, closer to the West Main intersection of the trail. But it starts at that very flat grade, large pipe, and where they stopped a few weeks ago when they were held up with the delivery of this next big manhole. It's a massive manhole that's 10 feet in diameter and over 10 feet deep. And in that manhole, where this pipe at 5 feet in diameter meets the next pipe up the hill, which is 4 feet, it comes in and there's roughly a 2 meter drop. I think it's 1.9, but round figures 2 meters, 6 feet plus drop, and that's an energy dissipator in itself, as that water drops down from the 4 foot pipe into the 5, and then the pipe will continue on when they start this next sort of phase of it up the pavement of the park driveway. That more or less follows the grade. It is a steeper grade pipe for there until it reaches the top entrance by sort of the VIC and the road down to the parks, down to Memorial Park. Then it gets even flatter as it crosses Park Street. It becomes very deep, and the road will have to be closed for probably.
How deep?
Has to go below our water and sewer, because
Yeah.
we were able to go very shallow through the parks property because there was little to no interference. There was
Right.
some irrigation lines and things, but under Park Street, to get clear of the two water mains and the sewer main and some other local storm lines. And this is, again, a 4-foot pipe crossing under Park Street that's 4 feet inside, so roughly 5 feet outside, concrete pipe, and then have to have clearance from that water, which is down, or the water's the shallowest, and there's a sewer line, which is down about 7 feet. So we're down, 14 feet plus under Park Street. So it'll be a massive hole. Traffic will have to be rerouted around West Main and up Gary Pearl, and vice versa, to local traffic only to those two areas. But that part of the pipe is also very flat, a 0.5% grade, I believe it is, crossing Park Street, which also, is a mechanism to slow the velocity down. The water line coming down, or the storm line, I should say, coming down Condon that was put in, hard to believe, 5 years ago, I guess, 2019 was when that storm line was replaced, is a 3-foot pipe, but it's at a very steep grade. It had to be to follow the road grade of Condon to get from the head walls up at the top of Condon down to where it entered into the older system. So that capacity at 3 feet is comparable to the capacity of the 4-foot pipe that will be going under Park Street. And like I said, the 5-foot pipe is 5 feet in diameter, which is actually 4 4s are 16, 5 5s 25. It's 1.5 times bigger than a 4-foot pipe. It's a very large pipe that will help slow down the velocity and the energy. So there'll be some other things done, some larger rock and likely a plunge pool at that area where it will drop into the south ditch of the trail. Did I ramble on too much?
No, I'm so sorry. No, that's wonderful, thank you. So when I was using the word velocity, I wasn't too far off.
You're correct, I mean,
Thank
flow
you.
is a function of area times velocity, and that's how you get, how flow is handled by pipe, by the pipe size or the area of the pipe.
I just wrote that down. Okay, thank you.
Our lesson in fluid dynamics. Councillor Girard.
Thank you, Worship. Director Bell, I got a couple questions here. So when you were talking about the catch basins, do we know what the state of the pipes between the catch basin, and the only reason I ask this is because my limited knowledge is if the catch basins are cracked or the top is one way that the water getting into the ground is going to move the dirt, but if the pipe itself is, that's the other.
We've got a vast mixture of pipe materials. The one that we talked about earlier that's been a trouble one there at the corner of, or the bottom of Palmer and Park Street. The pipes coming in and going out are all concrete. They're in good condition. It was just chosen at that decade when that, we'll call it a manhole because it's more than a catch basin. It's 2 pipes in and 1 pipe out, and it's fairly large and deep. And I said next to the utility pole, that's the only thing that seems to be failing. The pipes themselves are concrete in good shape. There are some pipes in the downtown corridor. One example would be the one last year's rain over by the Justice Center. I think folks might remember that. Call it a sinkhole, but next to the sidewalk near the Justice Center. Those pipes were galvanized, and some of them still in the ground are galvanized. We have a lot of galvanized pipe in the ground. Parts of Park Street are mostly concrete, but the downtown area, like even here, when they separated the stormwater out of the sanitary sewer in the downtown loop, like out here on Main Street, we'll say by the church, which is now the library. I know that pipe is galvanized and under that south curb line because of the decade that it went in, where the sewer main, which was water or storm and sanitary back in the day before we had a sewage treatment plant and everything went to the river directly. That was combined sewer. That's a mixture of either concrete or clay pipe. And even though it's much older than the galvanized pipe from the 70s or 80s, it's in better shape. So we're going to be spending some money. I mean, we can look at, and that will be part of this stormwater master plan, to look at the condition of these pipes too, and recommendations on can you is it more feasible to line them or replace them? You know, use the galvanized that's in the ground and put a liner down them. You lose a little capacity, but if that's the case, you know, if you lose too much capacity, then replacement is the only solution. But we've got a lot of it.
Okay, thank you. Next question is the master plan going to, like, I remember, and I think it was at one of the public inputs, where basically you said the master plan's gonna look at current issue areas. Is it gonna look just at current issue, or is it gonna look at, you know, every basic square kilometer or square foot of land in Kentville, when it does eventually get developed, what we need, you know, running to the river and on Park Street and in low places like that?
Focus, and it's a follow-up on the study that was started in 2015. That study focused mostly on existing infrastructure and setting priorities for capital investment, less so on undeveloped land. You know, that will have to be designed to today's standards with stormwater management areas and the right pipe materials and the right size pipes. But the focus of this will be looking at, you know, I'm not saying it won't touch on the undeveloped areas, but really they wouldn't be studying or recommending. It's too hard to know what's going to go in any of those areas, from density to amount of hard surface, and is it industrial or is it residential, those sorts of things can only be decided when that's being designed. But the existing stuff is the problem we're faced with today, and what we need to look at a 10-year capital investment program on to look at priorities and replacements.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
My last thing is, when you and I went to the asset and we came back and we started asking, and I'm gonna call it an asset audit, for lack of a better, is that, I've asked for it a couple of times, or at least has that been done? And will the firm that hopefully is designing and doing up this master plan, will they have access to that information?
They absolutely will have access to it. I was speaking with, it was the AIM network that did our asset management plan, and they've updated a lot of things in their systems. They have some new software and different technologies that they've given us and I didn't bring it tonight as a recommendation, but they've given us a price proposal to sort of bring, even though the report was only a couple years ago, they've had enough changes in their system that they've recommended that we go through a bit of an update, even on that plan. So I need to get that number to the CAO and our Director of Finance and talk about whether we're going to move forward, and that'll come to a recommendation, I would think, in October's CAC, if we will move to that updated plan. That doesn't mean we don't have one. We do have the one that I felt was never really finalized. That's why I met with the executive director, I guess, of the AIM network, and he suggested that we do this update, and it wasn't an astronomical amount of money, but it was in the $10,000 range. So once I get that scope and have a chat internally, we'll make a recommendation. But certainly get copies of what they've given us to date, and that will be provided for sure to the firm that's doing the stormwater master plan.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Councillor York.
Thank you. Through my role on the PTA, I get a lot of questions about the traffic plan for the construction that's going to happen there at Condon, and how that's going to be communicated to the schools, the school board, or specifically the busing. And families, because that's going to make the morning commute miserable for many people.
It'll cause delays. I mean, certainly the part of the detour, we'll call it, will involve Gary Pearl Drive. You know, buses that would maybe normally go, say from the downtown, I don't even know the bus routes, to be honest, but if they went from the downtown towards KCA along Park Street, they will have to go down West Main to get to Gary Pearl from that direction, or vice versa. But we will certainly, once we know that we're still too far away to know it's not a long time. It's a 2 or 3 day
Okay.
event. Plan to do most of the work. At this point in time, they're talking about after hours, doing night work. That doesn't mean that the road would be open in the day necessarily, but it may be partially open. It is such a deep cut that I don't see how they could really open the road until they're completely across, because, you know, they'll start on the VIC side and lay towards the Condon intersection. So it'll be, you know, they'll have to cut off the water lines, and because they would be suspended in the air. So it'll, you know, no one will be without water, at least under the current plan. That's certainly the goal. But there will be, you know, there'll be some interruption to the on Condon once they get to that, across the center line certainly to the south side of Park Street. So we'll have to get the cars and the folks out of Condon and find a place, you know, across the street at the upper parking lot by the ball field for them to be, which is not unlike what they were used to when we did the upgrades to Condon in 19 and 2020. But it will be a short reroute or detour around, and local traffic will be able to come, you know, right up to it. It'll be a construction zone, but it'll be safely fenced off so that everyone that lives on either side of that crossing can get to their homes through the detour. Just maybe not pass through during those couple days.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Director, thank you very much for your presentation and responses to our questions.
Thank you. Good night.
CAO, your turn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just first, before I get into administration's report, we did receive an update from the returning officer, and I believe that 25 nomination packages have been picked up downstairs. Those would be for either mayor or council. We now have 3 individuals that are running for mayor and 14 committed for council, and 5 p.m. tomorrow is the deadline to put in your papers. Just to complete his report, preparations are on track with IntelliVote and internet for telephone voting. And so that's the update on the status of the election. It certainly looks like it's going to be a busy election season. The CAO report is in the process of evolving into an administration report. It's sort of a hybrid where you see 2 reports this month, one CAO report and one administration report. CAO report is a little bit difficult to flesh out because the role is involved in so many of the other projects, committee reports the council report on, and community events that it tends to be a listing. With the creation of the Strategic Initiatives Coordinator, there's a lot more information that we want to make sure that we report to council and community. And also, the work of the deputy clerk was probably underreported in the past, as well as work associated with the deputy clerk position. You would see in the report there's environmental, accessibility, election, EDI, and any one of a number of other initiatives. We want to make sure that we fully report to council and community. So on a go-forward basis, you will see the CAO report retitled Administration Report, and it will have sections from each of the 3 of us. For tonight, I'd be happy to answer any questions on my report, and if there's questions on the administration report, I would leave that to the deputy clerk or strategic initiative coordinator to follow up on.
Thank you, CAO. Are there any questions for the CAO with regards to his report? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Yes, CAO, I'm just wondering what the update is on the racket facility.
I'll turn that over to Director Langell.
The update is they are looking to have funding secured for June 2025, and then I'll be working to finalize the lease with them as per Council's directive, and hopefully have that done within the next month or 2.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. After discussion tonight about the MPS and our and certainly not for this council, but whoever ends up sitting in these chairs, because I think it's a necessity, should we be making a short list of absolute necessities of things that need to be done, and should be started as priorities after the October 19th election. Like, what I'm thinking is, it's obvious to me after 2 public meetings and talking with Caroline tonight, an MPS review and an LUB review is absolutely essential and should be started ASAP.
So I don't have any concerns with council or administration, and administration will be doing this from our side anyhow, providing a list of what they see to be priorities. As you would know from my interview, the collective of council is who determines priorities for council. So that's important information to give to the new council. The new council will then determine where their priorities are, and from that, the direction that administration is going to go on. But yes, at least providing them with priorities as seen from this council is a good starting point.
All right, there being no further questions for the CAO specifically, CAO?
So you'll see a number of other sections under the CAO report. Alicia Christie is going to present on the rural tax rate follow-up report, Housing Accelerator Fund 2.0 action plan, minimum standards bylaw, and Deputy Clerk West will present on the public participation policy amendment.
Before I go into the rural tax rate follow-up, I just got the go-ahead from Dave on this. Kate, to answer your question in one sentence, taking what Dave said, putting it in one sentence, I know he wants to say more than this, but to answer folks' questions, you could say there is an implementation of a large stormwater management pipe that is being laid uphill with the implementation of a head wall to allow for water dissipation improvements. One sentence. Now, for the more technical terminology and like detailed information, Dave's your human. I am not that human. But if you've got need one sentence, I hopefully got you. All right, so the rural tax rate report is a follow-up to the report you had in July, and this information was really developed between myself, Director Matthews, and Nancy Lewis as well. Very important to mention that their expertise are critical within this process. At this stage, this is an information report. It's definitely been dynamic working with the province to figure out what this would look like for us. I'll name right off the bat, Kentville is an anomaly, where most of the time you see this rural tax rate implemented during amalgamation and is applied to communities that either join an existing county or et cetera. And if you remember during our conversations in July, there was this request from council to look at taking the municipality of King's residential base rate and applying it to the properties that are southeast of the 101 on Harrington Road. So this report doesn't have the map per se, but if you remember, it's that collection of properties that are off Harrington Road, who in 2023, Mayor Snow put a request for a decision to council to look at what we can do regarding the tax rate. And within the MGA, we are allowed a rural tax rate. However, in order to implement those, we need the same base rural tax rate for the entirety of the town. So if you wanted to offer a lower residential base rate for those 6 properties, we'd have to drop it for those 6 properties, drop it for the entire town, and then you'd have to do an additional to match our actual regulated base rate for the rest of Kentville, outside of those 6 properties. So it's complex. However, at this stage, as staff, we still feel there's more opportunity to look into this, and we'd like to take some extra time to see what's possible where we don't quite slot in to what is like mandated to do this piece. So we've reached back out for further conversations with the province on what we can do where this isn't a previous township per se, when the town of Windsor, or sorry, what was the township of Windsor has a different tax rate than what was standard West Hants. So we're chatting with them, and at this stage we wanted to provide the information so that you know we're looking into it and that we'd like to bring a solution forward to respond to council, but also to respond to the community members as well. So if you have some questions, happy to answer, and Wanda is also prepared to speak to that this evening as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Alicia. This is a really great report. I'm also going to say that I'm disappointed with the outcome, but I guess where my disappointment comes from is this was one of those things that we've been talking about since 2016. And, you know, and I've got 2 voicemails on my phone from folks that live up on Harrington Drive. And, you know, annually, I've spoken to them and said, you know, we're looking at this, and you know, the work that you have done is just truly amazing in such a short period of time, because you know, I was basing everything on the fact that the MGA said that, you know, municipalities can set their own tax rates. Nowhere in the MGA does it say that you need a base rate and then you start setting all your tax rates from there. So if they hadn't given us clearer direction, perhaps this could have happened. So unfortunately, to the folks on Harrington Drive, you got your tax bills. Yes, you still have the tax rate for the town of Kentville. It is what it is, and that's not a great answer, but I know that that, you know, what you've done so far, that, you know, there's still places to go. So, so I guess I'm encouraged by that. So this is one of those things for the new council, and it's already at the staff level. So, you know, they will see it when it comes for approval. Councillor Gerard, you've got your light on.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, so for example, if nonprofits own, we can reduce their tax rate.
So we reduced their tax rate from commercial to residential, so they don't truly have a different tax rate.
No, and we give rebates to folks in lower income brackets. Is there any way we could have a 101 rebate, and instead of saying we want to change the tax rate, go, this is your normal tax rate, but because we don't provide XYZ service, we're gonna rebate you, or make them apply for it.
We're looking at what might be available. Both of those examples are legislated to allow it. So there's specific legislation that says you can do this.
Okay.
So I don't think so, but we'll ask the question.
Okay, thank you.
No further action for this, unfortunately.
All right.
Thank you for the great work.
No worries. If I lined everything up correctly, we are chatting about the Housing Accelerator Fund next. Okay, so the report in front of you this evening is regarding the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund 2.0. And this fund was announced after the July CAC, so that was another moment that you received correspondence through email of that this fund has been announced, staff are looking into it, and that will bring the report forward to council. So this is the first time we've really come together at CAC since the funding was announced, and the application is due this Friday. It's a very quick turnaround, definitely shorter than the 2023. However, the Housing Accelerator Fund 2.0 exists because of the large uptake in 2024, and only municipalities who had applied originally and were not successful were able to apply in this round. And if you remember, in February of 2024, we did receive the correspondence that we were not successful with the previous Housing Accelerator Fund, and that there was potential down the line, and this is what they mean by the potential down the line. And with the rollout of the program this time, there was a lot more restrictions on what could be applied. So essentially what we applied for last year has been scrapped, and we've done a new application. One thing I will name, that in 2023, it was very broad. It was the world's your oyster type application. And so I do believe that this maybe helps us a lot, that they gave us, okay, this is what we're going to fund. We're giving you a menu this time. So I do think that's a benefit to us moving forward. And I also think it's a benefit because they were able to review what it looked like last year. How did the rollout go? And how does it interact with future funding that could come available regarding housing infrastructure? So from my perspective, that I see this as a real asset for us, and that this is the time that we get to look at this again. So the details within this report actually speak to another fund, and there's a reason for that. So since the announcement of the Housing Accelerator Fund 2.0, as staff, we've been meeting with the representatives to get more information, and what is very clear is that there are 10 best practices that are required for this fund that they expect you to slot into, and that is available in the appendix if you wanted to see that further, and it is available online if you wanted to read more specifically to each opportunity, but also happy to discuss in a later date, if that's helpful. But it was very clear, very wink energy that you should definitely submit with most of these priorities. And as staff, we've created the action plan that matches the exact wording of the 10 best practices with only 5. As a rural community, we're only required to submit 5. But the one I really want to highlight is number 1 of the 10 best practices to end exclusionary zoning. Within that, CMHC, so the federal government, has made it very clear that for urban communities, they do have to submit an application that allows for 4 units as of right for broadly across the municipality, and it was highly encouraged for rural municipalities as well. Since the announcement of the fund, the federal government has also announced the 2025 Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund, which you'll often see CHIF. And so this is a brand new fund from the federal government that will offer $6 billion in total, but one version of it over 8 years and one over 10, and the administer of it between the federal and provincial government. And this funding is really offered to allow for housing infrastructure. So that's anything with wastewater upgrades, that's stormwater management upgrades, speaking to things like the galvanized pipes, solid waste infrastructure, and really relates to a lot of the work we plan to do with the Donald E. Hiltz Connector Road. So this is a brand new fund that municipalities would have access to. However, to be eligible for the fund, there are certain conditions municipalities have to meet. One of which is that the municipality it is required that the municipality broadly adopts 4 units as a right across the municipality. So staff saw this as an opportunity to align us for future funding, where CMHC is asking for this and requiring it, and then a future funding from the federal government is asking for this and requiring it. It's been confirmed that if we do not adopt that, we will not be eligible for that $6 billion, and that's over, again, 8 years and 10 years worth of funding. That will be starting in 2025. The fund is opening April 2025. And staff are attending a session on this fund that's booked for later this month, so we can give further updates moving forward. At this time, this is what we know. So with that in mind, we put together the housing action plan is what the application requires you to call it. So if you see that within the report at the top, it says Town of Kentville HAF 2.0 Housing Action Plan. There's a small graph at the top, and this is a requirement of the application as well, these numbers. So between Darren and I, we do a calculation around what we think is possible to be permitted within the Town of Kentville over 3 years, with and without HAF funding. So with HAF funding, we see the potential for 125 units. And this results in the numbers that you see above. That puts an annual growth rate up by 47%. And an annual housing supply growth rate up by 1.35. And this is not necessarily up by units physically being built, but units being permitted and reviewed and allowed within community. So in order to achieve that, we're submitting 5 initiatives, one of which was spoken about earlier this evening. So initiative number 1 is to enhance process and efficiency, which would allow for implementation of an e-permitting system to enhance how we move through our permitting internally. It would allow us to hire an in-house housing inspector, building inspector for 3 years, and making permanent times available and public and evaluating improvements. That is a request of CMHC that we start to publicize that more robustly if we acquire the funding. And the initiative 2 is to transfer municipally owned land for affordable housing. The intention of that is figuring out what land we have that's eligible and making an inventory and a process to transfer that to nonprofits. The third is to end exclusionary zoning. This is where we see the allowing of 4 units as of right across all zones, but then also speaking to the R2 zone and looking at accessory dwelling units being allowed on those properties. We've had a lot of inquiries, maybe a lot is a big word. We've had inquiries for properties in the R2 zone in response to the provincial announcement of funding towards accessory dwelling units. But at this time, they're not permitted within our MPS and land use bylaw. And for Initiative 4, it is looking at to eliminate parking restrictions in the C1 zone. So this is a conversation that came up earlier tonight. And that's really an acknowledgement of the amenity space we have in our downtown core. And to Darren's point earlier that the town was and the buildings we have were built at a certain time, and amenity space often can be accommodated through like balconies per se, but you can't necessarily have balconies when 3 or majority of your walls are hidden by other buildings. So that is definitely a piece to look at. And then Initiative 5 is to, again, it's called eliminating restrictions and adding flexibility. And this is really looking at, again, the amenity space C1 zone, but also the eligibility around residential use and a review of minimum lot frontage. So all of these bullet points and initiatives can be pointed to in the 10 best practices that was released by CMHC. So we are trying to align as much as possible within the process to meet the funding requirements. And at this stage, with what we've predicted in the fund calculator, it says we're eligible for about $2 million for the work. Whether or not that is what's offered to us in a funding agreement, that's often negotiated. And one piece that I will name for any Nova Scotia applicants, we are in this moment of the sitting council is looking at the current plan, and the incoming council would approve the funding agreement. So we're not alone in that. A lot of other Nova Scotia municipalities are applying as well, but CMHC has acknowledged that, and their representatives have said that we'll commit more time to either bringing a new council up to speed, because not every province is doing this right now. So they are prepared to support us in that. And if we're offered the full 2 million, then it's expected that we deliver on the full plan. But if they come back and say 1 million, then we have an opportunity to negotiate, okay, well, within our capacity and with those dollars, this is what we can achieve. So no, the plan is malleable, but what we see right now, what staff have prepared is in hopefully to align with future funding as it becomes available. So there is a recommendation that we've shifted the words of what's the one printed in front of you, and I can reference that through Mayor Snow if that's helpful. And then I am here to answer questions, and Darren is also prepared to answer questions as well.
All right, Alicia, thank you very much. So to make it very clear to council, we are committing to submitting this application. That is the only commitment that we are making for the town. We are not committing to make any changes, and it will be the new council who will make those and who will sign the funding agreement. So all we are doing is submission of the application. So the motion is that CAC direct the CAO to staff the submission of the Housing Accelerator Fund application for the 2025-2028 Housing Action Plan for the town of Kentville.
So moved.
Councillor York, thank you. Oh.
Okay.
Did I get the wrong voice?
No, Kate moved it.
Okay.
Kate moved it, yes, and Kathy.
Okay.
All good.
Sorry. Deputy Mayor for the motion and Councillor Maxwell for the second. Thank you both. So it has been moved and seconded that CAC direct the CAO to staff the submission of the Housing Accelerator Fund application for the 2025-2028 Housing Action Plan for the town of Kentville. Is there any discussion or questions for Alicia on this matter? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Alicia, the Initiative 3, ending exclusionary zoning. So allowing accessory dwelling units in the R2 zone, do they get into the minutia of like how large, how small, or that's just that they permit those in the R2 zone? And then also the 4 units as of right in all zones. Can you just talk a little bit about those
of course,
two?
happy to. So in response to the first question regarding R2, the accessory dwelling, this is similar to points that have been brought up before. This does require us amending the NPS.
Okay, gotcha.
And within that, our NPS already outlines what accessory dwellings can look like on a property. I would imagine that through that process, and Darren, feel free to correct me whenever if I'm wrong, but within that process that we would look at, okay, what is a standard R2 lot? What would that look like if we allow accessory dwelling units? Because right now, the regulations are for R1 that have that single unit house on it. So there would be, similar to how there's regulations for R1, there would be for R2 as well. And then the 4 units as of right, similar to a lot of how our MPS is laid out, this just means that it's possible. It doesn't mean that an existing bungalow or 1 story would become 4 units. It still would have to meet building code, it still would have to meet fire code, all those pieces. It just means that it's possible. And it doesn't mean that each unit would be at all required to be, what's the word I'm looking for, renovated or whatnot. It just means that it's an option. What we're really saying is that we no longer allow just R1 zone. That's the expectations from the federal and provincial government, that at this stage, that level of density is not what they're looking for from a climate perspective, from a housing perspective, and affordability perspective. So hopefully that answers the question,
very, very helpful.
that would be a pretty robust process to dive into.
Sure.
And what I will name in regards to that 2 million, if we're offered it, as similar to the previous application, we don't receive it in bulk sum, we receive it in 4 installments, 3 of which are guaranteed, the 4th is only received if you show progress. So that's how you receive the 4th installment. And I've been chatting with municipalities who've also already received it, just to try and get a proactive idea of what does it look like in that first year. So hopefully once we have some more responses, and if we get closer to that agreement with CMHC, we'll have some information from neighboring municipalities who have received the funds.
Thank you, great work.
Yeah, no worries.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Alicia, have they provided any stats? It's one thing when the government gives money for housing. Have they, and I know it's only new, it's only been a year, but, how many units, I guess, have they given any stats on how many units have been started so far?
That's a great question. What I do know is that they are releasing a new housing report at the end of September that I would imagine would speak to that. Don't fully quote me on that. I don't necessarily know, but we can follow up on that. What we do know is that there was over 500 municipalities who applied and 128 were successful. So I can ask CMHC if we expect to see a report on those 128 municipalities, and then I can send that even just through email follow-up, and happy to say it out loud at council as well for the community. But I will reach out to CMHC to confirm.
Perfect, thank you.
No worries.
All right, if there's no further discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC direct the CAO to staff the submission of the Housing Accelerator Fund application for the 2025-2028 Housing Action Plan for the town of Kentville. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, Alicia, you're back on.
We're just going to keep rolling here, folks. The next topic this evening is in regards to our housing and minimum standards bylaw. And this is in front of you folks tonight, just based on correspondence you received from community members and questions around how is this bylaw enforceable within our community. And so at this stage, within this report, we do have a recommendation at the end regarding for a request for council to direct staff to repeal and replace the existing bylaw, which essentially means that it requires updates. This bylaw was originally written in 1981 and has gone under upgrades since then, but at this stage there is language that is out of date. For example, anytime we're talking about the bylaw officer, it uses a he, him pronoun. It also only speaks to garbage. It doesn't speak to compost and recycling. And really across the board in municipalities across Nova Scotia, it is referenced as just a minimum standards bylaw. It's very rare that you see housing and minimum standards. So there is some minor language updates that would help us with bylaw harmonization, especially when we're comparing to other communities. So that is a request of staff, and especially in regards to questions that council has had in regards to vegetation and yard frontage, and how do we regulate that? One thing I will name is that we are not the only municipality looking at this right now. The town of Bridgewater is looking at their minimum standards bylaw, as is the town of Lunenburg, for very similar reasons around, okay, what is the enforceable in regards to yards? How does this work? What is the process? And one thing I will name that this bylaw for us also interacts with Kings County, where we have the agreement with the building inspector services. So any process we have regarding this bylaw, if we move forward with the repeal and replace, we will work with Kings County as well, as there is an element of the bylaw enforcement there. And because there's been so many questions from community members as well as council regarding especially the yard side of our minimum standards bylaw, within your appendix, I've listed other bylaws that do speak to yards, how they vary, how they're similar. And one thing I will name is that in Ontario, you tend to see bylaws that complement a minimum standards bylaw that are specific to yards. And the town of Lunenburg right now was originally looking at a naturalization bylaw that has since shifted language, and they're revisiting that. But it does mean that we have some folks that we can be in discussion with and learn together versus trying to duplicate our work. So this is a good opportunity to look at this while other folks are as well. So really, the request tonight is to direct staff to begin reviewing this bylaw to bring it in front of council with recommendations for changes. And at that stage, we would still go through the bylaw process where it's a repeal and replace. We'd have a first reading, a second reading. We'd have to go through the approval of the province and etc. But it does mean there is opportunities to contribute and ask questions and see if there's things you'd like changed or shifted within the bylaw. But again, just as an overview, there is some definitely language update that would be beneficial for us and some opportunity to have some more harmonization with other municipalities across the province. So there is a motion. So it looks like I send it to you, Mayor Snow.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Great report. And based on the recommendation, our motion would be that CAC direct the CAO to initiate a repeal and replace process for the existing housing and minimum standards bylaw. Councillor Zabian, thank you. Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC direct the CAO to initiate a repeal and replace process for the existing housing and minimum standards bylaw. Is there any discussion on this matter? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you for your work on this. I certainly know, I'll say Councillor Maxwell and I certainly know there are certain people in this community, certain subdivisions where this is really high profile and it's been a real issue. So thank you for your work on this. I'm sure they will appreciate it and we appreciate it.
Yeah, so, no worries.
All right, ready for the question. The question is that CAC direct the CAO to initiate a repeal and replace process for the existing housing and minimum standards bylaw. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Moving right, you're leaving? Aren't you doing public?
I think the next one is
Okay.
Jennifer.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. Mine will be very brief. The public participation policy is a planning policy. Many of you came out, many residents came out this month for the 2 public participation meetings. There's a lot of P's there. So. For the COGS development application and the Bryson application in the West End and the North End. So these meetings are governed by a policy statement called G62. It talks about how we advertise, how we run the meetings, and the timing of those meetings. So the one thing that is not talked about is in relation to the MPS in February, Council approved a change in the MPS regarding how we tell our municipal neighbors when we're going to be making planning changes. So the changes that we made to the MPS that were recommended by our planning consultant, those were made to the MPS, but this change in this policy is to align with the changes that we've already made to the MPS. So that's around when there is a planning or a water issue, I believe, in the MPS, it talks about you need to consult with, for example, Kings County in our case. So this policy amendment just specifically talks to that. I think that's it.
All right, thank you very much. So for those of you following along in the MGA, this would be paragraph 204A-1, where the council shall adopt by policy an engagement program for engaging with abutting municipalities when the council is adopting or amending municipal planning strategy. So our motion would be that CAC recommend approval to council at the October 1st, 2024 meeting of council to amend policy G62, public participation planning, to meet the current provincial requirements for notice to residents in abutting municipal boundaries. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Zabian, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend approval to council at the October 1st, 2024 meeting of council to amend policy G62, public participation planning, to meet current provincial requirements for notice to residents in abutting municipal boundaries. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being, Councillor Maxwell?
Yes, thank you. G62 covers a lot of the advertisements and so on, to how we're going to interact with the public on various items. This one is just to amend to consult with Kings County on water and, what was it?
No, it doesn't go into that level of
Okay.
specification. What the addition to our current procedure is, when a public participation program is required, council shall notify the municipality of the County of Kings of a public meeting and send a copy of the planner's report to their council. You'll recall from our...
Yes, I remember this.
Yeah.
But what I want to get at is the fact that when we had the public participation for the COGS, residents didn't know about that. And putting it into the Chronicle Herald, that's not a good way to get information out to people, because their subscribership has gone way down. And so we did have discussions about that, and I thought we had mentioned that a notice would go to those residents, and that didn't happen. And I think we need an amendment to G62 to expand, when we're having such discussions like planning and things like that, that actual notices go out to the homeowners in that designated cone that we put around, because I think it's very unfair to do a development and have a public participation when residents know nothing about it. And so I just want to say that. I don't have any problem with this amendment, but I also think that we should be looking at G62 a lot deeper.
Through you, your worship, yes, we did commit to send notices out and we didn't follow up.
Yes.
I'll apologize for that. We were compliant with G62. Administration also believes that G62 should be updated. Newspapers aren't the medium that they once were, so we will be looking at that. But there was an oversight, and for that I apologize.
Thank you very much.
And as well, part of our limitation with newspapers, unfortunately, is the MGA. So there is activity ongoing with updates to or changes to the MGA, and unfortunately, newspapers still isn't one of the ones that's been made. And I think we provide that horsepower from behind the scenes. All right. If there's no further discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend approval to council at the October 1st, 2024 meeting of council to amend policy G62, public participation planning, to meet current provincial requirements for notice to residents in abutting municipal boundaries.
Is it off?
I think it's off.
So
when you turned your side on, did our side turn off maybe?
Should have. Hold on.
Okay, voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Staff reports have been presented and are now part of the record of this meeting. Staff, thank you for your reports and your attendance. So we'll move on to unfinished business. So we have a report on council remuneration for a review. And Alicia?
Yeah. Okay, so you do have a remuneration. I said remuneration once to Jeff, and now it's stuck in my head, and every time, like, please don't say it, Alicia. Anyways, this report is in front of you based on policy G5, which is our council remuneration and benefits policy, and this is really to ensure that we have adequate and appropriate remunerations for the incoming council. This is done every 4 years, and it's pretty uniform across municipalities. There's been lots of number sharing between municipal staff over the last few weeks in preparation for this. So what's provided to you this evening, the meat of it really is the Schedule A within the attachment, so the comparison to other municipalities. I will name right off the bat, Wanda got this today, that I had New Glasgow listed for 34,000, which is very off, which is, you know, those moments in the census where it does like the geographical but not the town specific. So thank you, Wanda. Oh, she's already gone. But for catching that, they are only 9,700 individuals. They grew rapidly by my statistics, apparently. Nonetheless, I'll name in this report where we have the NA, that's where numbers were still being confirmed by staff. We haven't received an update as of today, but all those other numbers were provided by municipalities. And the hope is for council to review and discuss what it might look like for the incoming council. I'm here if you have questions regarding the policy per se or the numbers, but at this stage I hand it to Mayor Snow.
Thank you very much, Alicia. At some point, the entire policy will have to be looked at, most likely by the new council. And one thing that should be noted is that typically the salaries of the town of Kentville council change by the cost of living on an annual basis. So that's where that big difference is. So the motion to council would be that CAC recommend approval to council at the October 1st, 2024 meeting of council to amend policy G5 council remuneration Schedule A. So basically, we're putting in the new data that Alicia has provided. Councillor Zabian, thank you. Deputy Mayor, thank you for the second. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend approval to council at the October 1st, 2024 meeting of council to amend policy G5 council remuneration Schedule A. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no... Councillor Maxwell?
Thank you. I think we need to be cautionary, and I see what other, municipalities are doing here, but I really think that if your salaries get up too high, people start to come into these positions for the money and not for the community. Do you understand what I'm saying? I think people will run for office as a job to make money and not be as heavily invested in the community as they should be. And I see this inching up and up and up, and I think we need to be cautious about how high we let those numbers go. And that's just what I want to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thanks, Mayor Snow. Just for clarity, these are the current data right now. Nothing's been inched up, right?
This is the
This
current.
is current, yeah. I just wanted
this is
to,
current.
just for clarity, so people understood. Okay, thank you.
Yes. So if we look at it, I have the full policy statement here. So if we look at November of 2020, our population in Kentville at that time was 6,271. The mayor's remuneration was 46,455. The deputy mayor was 27,591. Councillors was $25,206. So you see the difference on that bottom line of the information. So the other change that happened during that time period was the government changed the way we were taxed, because we had, it used to be that 1/3 of municipal council's wages was not taxed. So we had a tax-free allowance, and so there was a big shift in what our actual wages were due to that, to make up for the fact that we now had to pay taxes on 100% of our wages. So that's the inching up that has occurred. All right, are there any further questions or comments, or are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend approval to council at the October 1st, 2024 meeting of council to amend policy G5, council remuneration, Schedule A. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you. All right, we have, there are two matters of correspondence in your package. One with regards to acceptance of our amendments to our municipal planning strategy, and the second, a letter from Guysborough County. Is there any wish to speak to either of those pieces of correspondence by members of council? None. All right. Our new business is with regards to a proclamation for Right to Know Week. And the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the town of Kentville has adopted the principles of openness, transparency, and accountability, and whereas Part 20 of the Municipal Government Act gives citizens the right to access information in custody or under the control of the town of Kentville, and whereas access to information ensures citizens of Nova Scotia have the opportunity for meaningful participation in the democratic process, and whereas a celebration of the rights of citizens to access information will facilitate informed public participation in policy formulation, ensure fairness in government decision-making, and permit the airing and reconciliation of divergent views. And whereas the town of Kentville joins all other Canadian jurisdictions and democracies worldwide in acknowledging International Right to Know Week. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Sandra Snow, Mayor of the Town of Kentville, do hereby proclaim September 23rd to September 29th, 2024, the Right to Know Week in the Town of Kentville. So that is the proclamation. So the motion is that the CAC proclaim the Right to Know Week, September 23rd to September 29th, 2024. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Zabian, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC proclaim Right to Know Week, September 23rd to September 29th, 2024. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that the CAC proclaim Right to Know Week, September 23rd to September 29th, 2024. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, our business is complete, and the floor is now open to public comments. Members of the public are invited to speak to council on any agenda item. You will be provided with 3 minutes to speak. Please provide your name and address prior to speaking.
Good evening. My name is Bonnie Bennett, and I live on Condon Avenue. I'm wondering, since there now are so many candidates for the upcoming election, could there be some kind of a public forum, not a question and answer thing necessarily, but they say there's 14 candidates for council and 3 for mayor? I was just thinking for residents, I know I would be very interested in getting to meet each person, not a question and answer thing to put them on the spot, but for each candidate to be able to explain a little bit about themselves, what their hopes and projections are for upcoming council, and maybe just have a little coffee after, and a little tiny meet and greet with some kind of a time limit, so that it's not too taxing for everybody, but just give us a chance to meet everyone. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ron Cousins. Reason I'm speaking here is it's about the old school property, Ryan's Park. I live right across the road from it, and 9 stories are going to be right in front of my house. And I think it's way too high, and the neighbors that are right near it, some of them are at the last meeting, they think it's way too high too. And you say, we can't stop it because there's no limit on what they're allowed to do. Well, I think you should have I don't quite know how you do it, but make a notion or a motion or something so you do have a rule, so how high they can go. If you can't do it on this one, do it on the next one, because in the way that the development works, you got your bylaws and your whatever, but you can change them anytime. What's the good of having them if you can just change them? And I remember how it started, when Dave Corcoran was mayor, he said, only thing we can build here, if we don't change it to whatever, he says, we can only build a jail or a school. So they changed it, but now they can do anything. And the other thing is, I questioned the parking when it was 4 stories high. And I called the office here, and they said, and rightfully so, that there was plenty of parking. They looked into it. Now my question is, was there plenty of parking for everybody having 1 car, or was there plenty of parking for everybody having 2 cars, and their relatives come to visit them once in a while? And I don't think anybody found that out, but maybe they did. And then the other thing is, with 9 stories, it's going to be a lot of sewer and water going in the pipe on the school street. And I hope our sewers don't all back up when they get so much of it. I mean, that's probably overreacting, but some of these concerns, I think they should be addressed. And I'm just, giving my opinion. But thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
My name's Steve North, and I own a property on School Street, and I have the same concerns that Ron does, and I had expressed that earlier. When you think about it going up 9 stories, we're on a hill. We have a street up above us called Overlook. That's because it overlooks the valley, which now it's going to overlook a 9-story apartment building. It will affect Overlook, it will affect Spring Garden Road, excuse me, and it will affect properties above that. So I don't think it's proper that only the people in the immediate area are getting a notice on this. I think people that are up that view plane should be getting notice of it. In Halifax, they have view plane restrictions that take that into consideration, and I don't think Kentville's done that perhaps because we've had horizontal development rather than vertical development. When you think of vertical development, the developer is going to be in there on a much lower cost basis for land per unit. So it does change the dynamics of development in the town, he will have an advantage over potentially other parties because he's going to be going in on a lower cost base on the land if he goes up. So I think some of that should be taken into consideration before you okay that development, because it is going to actually affect quite a few people that are up that viewplane. And I know if I were on Overlook, I'd be a little aggravated, or Spring Garden. Anyway, that's just my comment.
Thank you. Right, the council has confidential land disclosure and legal matters which must be conducted in a closed session. We require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda items. The motion is to move into a closed session to discuss the agenda items. Councillor Zavian, thank you. Deputy Mayor, second, thank you. It's been moved and seconded that council move into a closed session, and the question is on adoption of the motion to move into a closed session. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried, and the time is 8:46.
So my good friend Ahmad is going to